So today we're going to hear a story about magical Christmas treasury. The first story of this book is Mr. Squirrel's Christmas. Mr. Squirrel looked out of the window in his woodland home and frowned. Although it was freezing outside, the woods were still full of animals, laughing and smiling. Mr. Squirrel huffled angrily to himself. He couldn't see what made everybody to be so happy about, and to make matters worse, tomorrow was Christmas Day. Mr. Squirrel hated Christmas. As far as he was concerned, there was only one thing worse than Christmas Day itself, and that was all those silly animals pretending to be nice to each other just because it was Christmas. He really couldn't see what they all had to be jolly about. "Stuff and nonsense," muttered Mr. Squirrel as he hammered a sign to his front door. "Christmas cancelled," he read aloud. "There, that should do. Stop everybody from bothering me for a while." And then he went back into his cozy house. Mr. Squirrel didn't intend to go outside again until the festive season was well and truly over. He was just sliding the bolts across the door when tap tap, there was a knock on the door on the other side. Mr. Squirrel was furious. "Can't you read?" he shouted as he swung open the door and glowed at whoever had dared to knock. At first he couldn't see anyone. Then he looked down and saw a tiny dormouse standing on the doorstep. It was Dinky Dormouse, who lived next door. He had a big smile on his face and a colorful card in his hand. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Squirrel," he said shyly. "Go away!" shouted Mr. Squirrel. But I just wanted to give you this," shuddered Dinky Dormouse. He held a colorful card for Miss Squirrel to take. Mr. Squirrel glanced at the card and shuddered. On it was a crowd of animals gathered around brightly decorated Christmas tree, singing carols. "Can't you read?" he growled. "Christmas is cancelled as far as I'm concerned. Now buzz off." And with that, Mr. Squirrel slammed the door at Dinky Dormouse's face. So this is the colorful card's picture. He was just about to push the bolts across when something plopped into his doormat. He couldn't believe his eyes. That was a horrible card. Mr. Squirrel picked it up and read what it said. "You are invited to the woodland Christmas party. Starts at 12 o'clock sharp in the glade. No need to bring anything but a smile." Mr. Squirrel was furious. How dare they invite him to the stupid Christmas party? Did they think they had nothing better to do than stand around in the cold with a bunch of animals he didn't know? He wrenched the door to open and raced outside. Dinky Dormouse took one look at Mr. Squirrel's angry face and scampered across the snow. "And don't come back!" shouted Mr. Squirrel, and just to make sure that he didn't, he chased after him. But he didn't get too far when whoops! He tripped over a twisted tree root and landed with a thud on the ground. Yeah, he landed with the thud while he's still chasing Dinky Dormouse. "Are you all right?" asked Dinky Dormouse, helping him to his feet. "Of course I am," snapped Mr. Squirrel. He was about to stomp away when he gave a yelp. "Ouch!" He had twisted his ankle and could hardly walk. "Let me help you," said Dinky. And although Mr. Squirrel tried to wave him away, Dinky helped him back to his warm kitchen. "Now rest your foot on the stool," said Dinky, guiding him to his comfy chair beside the fire. He's helping him, even though all the bad things he did to him. Mr. Squirrel huffed and puffed, but it was no use. Dinky instead insisted on tending to his ankle. "Now, doesn't that feel better?" said Dinky after he wrapped up Mr. Squirrel's ankle in a clean bandage. "I suppose it does so," grunted Mr. Squirrel truculently. "Now I'll just make you a cup of acorn tea and I'll be on my way," said Dinky. Although Mr. Squirrel tried telling him to go away, Dinky got to work and making him a lovely cup of tea. As he busied himself in the kitchen, Dinky chattered away. Despite himself, Mr. Squirrel sank back into his chair and listened. Dinky told him all about his family and woodland friends, the fun they always had together, especially on Christmas Day. He even sang Mr. Squirrel one of the carols he enjoyed singing around the Christmas tree. So here's a picture of him making a cup of acorn tea. He's sitting here listening what he's telling. From time to time, Mr. Squirrel found himself asking a question about who is related to whom or who lived where. There was a lot that he didn't know about his neighbors. After a while, Mr. Squirrel started to get an odd, fuzzy feeling inside. It wasn't a feeling he had. Suddenly he realized that he wasn't feeling grumpy. In fact, he didn't even know if he had been better. He'd think he was almost feeling happy.
By the time Dinky said it was time to go, Mr. Squirrel didn't want him to leave. It was nice talking to somebody for a change. After he had gone, Mr. Squirrel wondered if perhaps he was lonely. Then he gave himself a good shake. Of course, he was not lonely. After all, why would he want to waste his time babbling to a bunch of silly animals that didn't get acorn gathered, the dandelion wine brewed? But no matter what he told himself, he went to bed with a warm, fuzzy feeling in his tummy.
The next morning, Mr. Squirrel awoke with a tiny smile on his face. He felt so happy that he decided to go outside and take down his silly sign again. As he tore it down, he saw something leaning up against the frame of his door. It was a beautifully carved walking stick with an acorn for a handle. Tied to it was a card saying, "Merry Christmas, love, from your woodland pals."
Mr. Squirrel's face broke out into a big grin. It was the first Christmas present he had ever received. "It's just what I need," he said to himself. How thoughtful.
Later, when he was counting his acorns, Mr. Squirrel found himself humming an unfamiliar
tune. "What is that?" he asked himself. Then he stopped humming as he remembered it was a Christmas carol the Dinky sung to him the previous evening. Mr. Squirrel laughed at himself. He must be getting soapy in the old days.
Later that day, Mr. Squirrel was dusting mantelpiece when he saw something poking out from behind of the clock. It was an invitation to the woodland party. Dinky must have put it there before he left. Mr. Squirrel pulled it out and read thoughtfully to himself. "You are invited to woodland Christmas party. Starts at 12 o'clock sharp in the glade. No need to bring anything but a smile."
Mr. Squirrel drummed his claw on the card and thought hard. It might actually be nice to spend Christmas Day with other animals. He looked at the clock. It was 5 to 12. If he was quick, he could just make it in time.
He limped to his pantry and loaded a basket full of acorns and dandelion wine. Then he limped across to a chest that he had kept hidden beneath his bed and dug out a sack full of toys that he hadn't played with since he was a little squirrel. He had decided that he could take a smile to the party and lots more besides. As Mr. Squirrel limped towards the glade, the smile on his face began to fade. What if he wasn't welcome at the party? After all, he was a grumpy old squirrel. He was always shouting on other animals for making too much noise or getting in his way. When he was not out collecting acorns, he slowed down and he was about to turn away when he heard somebody calling him. It was Dinky Dormouse. "You came!" cried Dinky. "We hoped you would." He rushed forward and helped Mr. Squirrel with his load. "What do you have here?" laughed Dinky. "You didn't need to bring yourself anything. We just wanted you to come and enjoy yourself, and so will I. But I thought I'd bring some food and drink and toys for the children's. It's Christmas after all. Oh, and thank you for my lovely present. It's just what I need." Before Mr. Squirrel could take another step, a sea of smiling faces surrounded him. Soon Mr. Squirrel was chattering away to the animals as if he did every day of the week. Once he met everyone, he even played a few games. Of Huntakon, a small bunny came up to him and tugged at his paw. "Excuse me, Mr. Squirrel," squeaked the bunny, "but you're not really grumpy, are you?" Everyone gasped, and silence fell over the glade. Surely, if anything was going to make Mr. Squirrel angry, that was. But they didn't have need to worry. Mr. Squirrel began to chuckle silently, and then he began to laugh out loud. Soon he was laughing so much that he had to hold to his sides. One by one, everyone else joined in. Soon the woodland glade was filled with happy and laughter. Eventually, Mr. Squirrel managed to stop laughing long enough to answer the bunny. "No, I'm not grumpy, not anymore," he smiled. Later, after everyone had filled to eat and drink, Mr. Squirrel handed out all the toys to the children, as each one thanked him and planted a wet kiss on his cheek. He felt warm and fuzzy inside. Spending Christmas with others really was great fun. "I have just one more thing to say," he said, raising a drink and his paw. "And that is, Merry Christmas, woodland friends." And from that day on, Mr. Squirrel always shared Christmas with his woodland friends. Thank you. I hope you liked the story. So, please like and subscribe our channel to listen new videos every day.